It's actually been a while since I last saw a legit new Disney animated movie. I've seen a few Pixar movies recently, but no Disney movies since Ralph Breaks the Internet, I think. Which I thought was pretty good, and you know what? This looked pretty good too. And when all the scores and ratings started to trickle in, it started to look even more promising. Because the response to this seemed to be overwhelmingly positive, so I got excited. Because I like myself a good animated movie, and it's always a nice break from the kinda movies I usually watch too. And you know, this looked like Disney were going back to their roots. Bringing us another classic Disney princess movie, this time inspired by Chinese culture, much like Mulan. But I didn't mind that too much because I haven't really seen one of those in a while. However, I did have this little cynical voice at the back of my mind whispering things too, saying, you know they just did that to make bank in China, right? You know that's what they're doing, right? But I really didn't want to believe that. I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt here. And even if that's what they were doing, it didn't mean it couldn't be a good movie. So I shut that voice down and pressed play, feeling very optimistic and looking forward to having a good time with this. Unfortunately, the movie opens up with a pretty clunky little intro sequence, where it basically explains the whole backstory of the world and what's going on. Which usually isn't the best way to kick off a movie, and it just feels like an unnatural info dump. But I thought, oh well, it's not the worst thing I've seen, and you do need to get that information out somehow anyway. And then we get to the actual movie, which starts off setting up even more of the story. We're introduced to the main character, who is sort of a warrior princess, who, surprise surprise, falls into the typical Disney Pixar category of a protagonist with one or less parents. And who also happens to have a cute little cuddly sidekick, because why not? And this is the point where you can start playing Disney Pixar bingo. Because this one pretty much checks all the boxes for a prototypical animated movie from either of them. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, if it ain't broke, then don't fix it. And it certainly works well enough in quite a few of their movies, so who can blame them? Alright, so the movie is going, setting up everything, and then about 20 minutes into it, it jumps forward in time. And that's when the actual movie starts, so all of the previous stuff was basically just set up. So again, not the smoothest of intros to a film I've ever seen, it just felt a tad bit clunky. But now we're already a fair bit into the runtime, and I'm ready to have a good time. Unfortunately, that good time never really arrives because I never felt connected to the movie. To the characters and the story, it all just felt so bland and uninspired to me. And hyper predictable too. I mean, I literally sat there going, and this is where this happens? And then it did. Every time. Because this movie follows a very clear formula and doesn't deviate from that even slightly. There were no surprises or twists I didn't see coming because everything just follows a very clear path. And the actual plot here is nothing but your very basic find the MacGuffin type thing, where the protagonist goes from one place to another collecting items they need. And the deeper we got into this movie, the stronger that cynical voice in the back of my head grew. Because everything about this movie screams calculated, and nothing about it says creative or innovative. Other than the actual visuals, I guess. They obviously put a lot of work into that. But if you break this movie down, it's like they sat down in a boardroom and asked the question, how can we make an animated movie that's guaranteed to be as profitable as possible? And in this day and age, that starts with appealing to the Chinese audience. And appealing to kids is never a bad idea either, and I'm sure kids might like this. In fact, I think if I were a kid, I would especially like the dragon character in this. But the adult in me just didn't find it particularly amusing, and even though this movie could occasionally be rather amusing, overall I never thought it was actually funny or hilarious, it was just amusing. And you know, even though this story hits all the beats it's supposed to, it just felt hollow to me, and none of it really mattered because I didn't feel invested. And I haven't been this disappointed with a movie probably all year, to be honest. Because I went into this excited and I wanted to and really tried to like it. But beneath the shiny surface, there's just nothing there. It's just your basic paint-by-number stuff. And compare this to something like Toy Story 4 that I thought was just gonna be a shameless cash grab. but turned out to be actually really good. I mean, you can see where the problems lie. That was fun and creative. This is just good looking but uninspired stuff done according to a set template. And it didn't do anything new or creative, and as a result we got something very bland. Which doesn't mean it's terrible, by the way. It's not. It does work perfectly well as a narrative piece of fiction. But it's completely forgettable and doesn't stand out in any way, shape or form. Again, other than the visuals. And as a result, I can't really give it much more than a very low 6. Boop. So you can probably skip this or don't. It's also perfectly watchable. So maybe do whatever you feel like. After all, I'm not your dad. But hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up or sub to the channel because that would be fantastic.